bá jáde. Kò sí dáríjì fẹ́ni tó bá jáde. Kò sí dáríjì fẹ́ni tó bá jáde. Àyàfi kókó fún sọ. Kò sí dáríjì fẹ́ni tó bá jáde. Kò sí dáríjì fẹ́ni tó bá jáde. Àyàfi kókó fún sọ.
Akí gbogbo ẹ̀yin olólùfẹ́ BBC News Yorùbá kábọ̀ sórí ìkànnì yìí. Ìlú Òṣogbo ní ìpínlẹ̀ Ọ̀ṣun ni a wà níbi tí àwọn èèyàn tàti rí àwọn ènìyàn tí wọ́n fi ẹ̀rù hàn ní ìlú Òṣogbo ní agbègbè Alẹ́kùọdù lórí ìgbẹ́jọ́ tó wáyé nílé-ẹjọ́ tribunal ní àná ni wọ́n ti fi ẹ̀rù hàn ní àti àárọ̀. A máa bá àwọn èèyàn tí a rí ní bíbá yìí sọ̀rọ̀ kí a gbọ́ nǹkan tí ó ń ṣẹlẹ̀.
Omi ló máa gbé wọn lọ. 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 Tinubu ti ṣẹ̀ wá. Orúkọ mi ni Comrade Hafiz Adébáyọ̀ Mukaila tí gbogbo yẹn pè ní General Infinity.
Kí ni nǹkan tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ akẹrẹ́rò tó pọ̀ nìyí?
Ẹ rí wípé gbogbo àwọn èèyàn bọ́ síta lọ́pọ̀ yanturu láti fi àìdùn ọkàn wọn hàn sí bí àwọn àjọ elétò ìdájọ́ tí wọ́n dá ẹjọ́ tó súyọ níbi awuyewuye ìdìbò nípínlẹ̀ Ọ̀ṣun tí wọ́n lọ dá ẹjọ́ tí a ń pè ní ẹjọ́ bùgá, ẹjọ́ jàǹkárá, tí wọ́n lọ gbé ààrẹ, wọ́n lọ gbé fẹ́lẹ́bí ìdìbò tí gbogbo èèyàn ní nípínlẹ̀ Ọ̀ṣun ní ọjọ́ 15 oṣù kejì ọdún 2022 tó fi Démọ́lá Adélékè wọlé gẹ́gẹ́ bí gómìnà. Ìdájọ́ ilé ẹjọ́ wọ́n fi ẹ̀tẹ́ lẹ̀ wọ́n palàpálàpá, wọ́n wá lọ gbé ìjọba fún ẹni tí ìṣòro wọlé. Gbogbo aráàlú wá bọ́ta lónìí, wọ́n jẹ́ kó máa yé gbogbo ayé wípé ìdájọ́ náà ìdájọ́ jàǹkárá ni, ìdájọ́ náà ìdájọ́ bùgá ni. Àwọn ọmọ láwọn ò ní gbà àyàfìgbà tí ìdájọ́ òdodo tó bá múlẹ̀. Ẹ rí wípé àtọmọdé àtàgbàlagbà wọ́n ti wà níta, wọ́n káàkiri gẹ́gẹ́ bí òfin ṣe fàyè ẹlẹ̀ wípé tá à ń pè ní ìfẹ̀hónúhàn wọ́ọ́rọ́wọ́ òun làwọn èèyàn ṣe lẹ́nu láti fi ẹ̀dùn ọkàn wọn hàn pé inú àwọn ò dùn sí ìdájọ́ bùgá eléyìí tí àwọn méjì tí wọ́n fẹ́ rí pé àwọn làwọn ó determine ní tó jẹ́ fèètì gbogbo ará àtolùgbé ìpínlẹ̀ Ọ̀ṣun.
Ẹ kí wàá ní nǹkan tí ẹ ń pè fún báyìí?
ní tá à ń pè fún báyìí ni wípé àwọn àjọ tí a pè ní Nigerian Judicial Council ní Nàìjíríà NJC kí wọ́n tọwọ́ kí wọ́n yẹ ìdájọ́ náà wò yàtọ̀ fún pé ẹgbẹ́ òṣèlú PDP pé wọ́n ti lọ sí ilé ẹjọ́ kò tẹ́mi lọ́rùn báyìí, ṣùgbọ́n irú ìdájọ́ báyìí ó yẹ kí àwọn àjọ tí wọ́n ń rí ṣètò ìdájọ́ Nàìjíríà ó yẹ kí wọ́n máa yẹ̀ wò kí wọ́n sì máa fi ìyà tó tọ́jà àwọn tí wọ́n bá ń fèrú gbàbùkún. Torí pé bó làwọn èèyàn ó ṣe dìbò táwọn méjì kan ó jókòó bì kan tí wọ́n sọ wípé àwọn òfin tó jẹ́ ojú ẹ̀rí ilẹ̀ àwọn àmọ́ lo ẹ̀rí tó tẹ́ wọn lọ́rùn láti mọ̀ ṣe kíni láti mọ̀ fáwọn èèyàn.
Orúkọ yín lẹ́ẹ̀kan sí?
Orúkọ mi ni Hafiz Adébáyọ̀ Mukaila tí ògbó ń pè ní General Infinity.
Níbi mo sọ̀rọ̀ lánàá náà màá tún sọ lẹ́nu. Orúkọ mi ń jẹ́ Síkírù, gbogbo èèyàn mọ̀ mí sí Bọ́ǹfìtà. Nǹkan tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ ni pé à ń fi ọkàn wa fi sọ̀rọ̀ fọ́wọ́n èèyàn kan ṣàánú wa lórí ìbò tán yí fún wa ta nà wọ́n. APC lèmi gangan ti wá bọ̀ ìwà wọn ò dá ìwà kà bọ̀ nǹkan tí à ń bẹ̀ lọ́hùn fún kọ́lọ́n jẹ́ àbí tá à ń lọ kọ́lọ́n jẹ́ àwọlé kí gbogbo èèyàn dúró tì wá.
Ṣùgbọ́n gbogbo èèyàn sọ wípé àbíkọ̀tù ló yẹ fẹ́ lọ bí gbogbo nǹkan tẹ̀ ṣe ìpínlẹ̀ rí sọ sí.
ìta bá ṣe báyìí ìlú kò ní mọ̀ pé ìyà ń jẹ wá ìyà yẹn ló mú wa máa ṣe báyìí kí àwọn èèyàn lè ṣàánú wa kó fún wa ní nǹkan tá à ń fẹ́ la fi ṣe rálì.
Ẹ̀rọ àkọ́kọ́ mọ́mí wa kí ló ń ṣẹlẹ̀ níbi táwa yìí.
nítorí ọba fẹ́ gbẹ̀tọ́ wa fẹ́ gbẹ̀tọ́ wa Adémọ́lá Adélékè òun ló ní ìbú ẹ̀wọ́n ládẹ̀ ní a fẹ́ gbẹ̀tọ́ wa padà ní kíákíá ni o ní orúkọ ìfẹ́sẹ̀sì gé ọlálẹ̀ kan a fẹ́ gbẹ̀tọ́ wa padà lọ́wọ́ àwọn APC ọwọ́ Oyètọ́lá àti Tinubu kẹfẹ̀tọ́ wẹ́lẹ̀ fún Adémọ́lá Adélékè ìmọ̀lẹ̀ òun àgbẹ̀ fún olóyìnbẹ̀. orúkọ mi ló yẹ ní ìta.
kí ni nǹkan tí ẹ pè fún nínú
à ń fi ẹ̀hónú wọn fún ẹjọ́ tí wọ́n dá fún Adémọ́lá Adélékè lọ ní àná àgbà torí pé fúnra àwọn Ọ̀ṣun àwọn APC ti tú wa a lè fẹ́ tó wà wọ́n yìnbọn wá fún wa tí wọ́n má ti ọ̀pọ̀ tí wọ́n dìbò fún wa àbúrò ẹgbà ìtọ́ wa padà kíákíá kí Adémọ́lá Adélékè tó máa ṣe ìjọba lọ àìjẹ́bẹ́ ọkọ̀ máa bàjẹ́ wọ̀ pẹtrol ti wọ́n àdẹ́pàwọ̀ mọ́.
a kí gbogbo ẹ̀yin olólùfẹ́ BBC padà gbogbo ẹ̀yin tẹ̀tẹ̀ṣẹ̀ ń darapọ̀ mọ́ wa lórí ìkànnì yìí ìlú Òṣogbo ni a wà ní ìpínlẹ̀ Ọ̀ṣun níbi tí a ti rí tí wọ́n ti ń fi ẹ̀hónú hàn lórí ìdájọ́ tó wáyé nílé ẹjọ́ ní ìlú Òṣogbo ní àná tí àwọn ọmọ ẹgbẹ́ òṣèlú àti àwọn aráàlú tí wọ́n ní àwọn fi ẹ̀hónú hàn yìí pé ètò ìdájọ́ tí wọ́n ṣe kò tẹ́ àwọn lọ́rùn gẹ́gẹ́ bí a ti ṣe ń wò lójú òpó yìí a rí i pé àwọn èèyàn pọ̀.
We have to draw some lessons from the Osun case. Secondly, the judiciary is not on trial because as far as the law is concerned, we are dealing with the majority judgment in a 3-member panel of judges. It is the decision of the majority that carries the day, even though the minority judgment will also be useful if you are filing an appeal, because I expect the Adeleke group to urge the Court of Appeal to affirm or endorse the judgment, the minority judgment, while the Oyètọ́lá will insist that, or will urge the Court of Appeal to affirm the majority judgment. That is the way it is done. It is unfortunate that this journey, which you said is tortuous, will have to end at the Supreme Court, which shouldn't be so. For me, that is the most painful aspect of it, whereby increasingly the courts are being made to replace the electorate in a way that an election is concluded, a return is made by Inec, the Inec announces the winner, but there is no confirmation of the winner until we move from the election petition tribunal to either the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court. But in this case, it's going to end at the Supreme Court, which shouldn't be so. But the most important aspect of the judgment for me is the use of beavers to capture voters. It is mandatory that every voter must be recorded by the beavers. It is after you have been captured by the beavers as a voter that you will get your ballot paper, thumbprint, and then, drop it. At the end of the whole exercise, the results that are manually recorded in the form EC 8A must tally with the beavers report. In other words, if you are not captured in the beavers and you are said to have voted, that will be said to be overvoting. And that could lead to an annulment of the election in that particular polling unit. So Nigerians are being made to realize that if you want to vote and you want your vote to count, you must ensure that you are captured by the beavers. Now, going from there, in this particular instance, before the petition was filed, Oyètọ́lá and the APC applied to the INEC, and INEC gave them, applied to the INEC for the Beavers report and the form EC8A. INEC gave them both and certified them on the basis of which the petition was prepared. It was in the middle of the case, during the pendency of the case, that INEC issued another Beavers report to the PDP, which formed the basis of their defense. Ditto for INEC. But when the judges examined these documents, the majority of the judges came to the conclusion that the Beavers report that is more credible in the circumstance is the one that was issued before the contemplation or before the filing of the petition, and not the one made during the pendency, which could be manipulated, to meet the challenge before the court. I think that is the point that the tribunal made. But all the three judges also agree that Governor Deleke embark or engage in forgery of his certificates. You know, so those are the two grounds on which at least the majority of the judges, you know, annulled the election.
Right. Mr. Falana, you alluded earlier that what's really upsetting to you is the fact that, you know, the tribunal is now taking the job of INEC. You know, the tribunal said that they deducted...
It's been made to take the job of INEC.
Yes.
By the INEC.
Right.
By the INEC.
Right. Well, they say that...
Because if the ICT department had been more circumspect and had realized the enormity of the responsibility, you know, entrusted on INEC, we shouldn't be in this kind of embarrassing situation once again.
Absolutely. Now, a lot of people are saying because the tribunal deducted the overvoting observed from the votes scored by both candidates and declared Oyetola winner. They're saying, why is it that the election there was not cancelled? And then there should have been a re-election at that point.
Well, that is the provision of the law. I mean, the tribunal followed the provision of the law. It's unfortunate because every vote must count. But again, politicians are being warned, the INEC is being warned that we must ensure that the votes of our people count. For me, what the voters may have to do in those areas is perhaps to sue INEC for damages. That you have wasted my votes. But there must be sanction for impunity.
All right, Mr. Falana, part of what a number of people are also talking about, apart from the fact that they say that, yes, a good number of people might have been disenfranchised when a rerun, you know, could have been called instead of just cancelling their votes. But people are saying that, is there a case for the sitting governor to claim that the judgment was malicious, given the inferences that the chairman of the tribunal made to his dancing buga, you know, and people are saying that if you know where I'm going, sir, that if that is the position, maybe the judgment will not have been fair to Governor Adeleke, you know, ab initio. What has Buga got to do with the letter of the judgment?
On a very... Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please
on a
go
very
on.
serious note, judges it's not unexpected to introduce humor into judgments. And every judge must be current and move with time. And so there is nothing out of the ordinary when you read the judgment. For instance, is what lawyers will call an obiter dictum. Just by the way, it cannot form the basis of, it can't form a ground of appeal. And I was telling my colleagues in a WhatsApp group, there is nothing strange in judges reflecting the currency, or the current situation in the country. I remember an instance in a Supreme Court case where Justice Esho had to define who is a reasonable man. And for the elite, a reasonable man may be somebody cruising in his 504 car. While for the masses of our people, Justice Esho said, it might be somebody in Kano, taking his tour, or a market woman in Sangros in Lagos, or a man in Okrika dress. And nobody came out to say, oh, why did you use such terms to humiliate the ordinary or the reasonable man in Nigeria? So I think the judges simply introduced humor. And it has nothing to do with the essence of the judgment. Hence, it cannot form a basis of a ground of appeal. No, not at all.
Okay, so there will be an appeal. Governor Adeleke has said that he will go on appeal.
It's already indicated that it's going on appeal.
As indicated. Okay, so explain to us clearly what that means in terms of status quo ante, prevailing. Does it mean that the governor will remain on the seat? Yes. Unlike the ASU. Unlike the ASU case, where after ASU lost the case that they took to court, the general feeling was that ASU has lost to the federal government, and the lecturers ought to return to the classrooms. It won't matter what their grounds of appeal will be, but they ought to return to classroom. But in this case, tribunal has Inec. It's not the same? Okay.
Yeah, because the law is very clear on this point. And what the law is saying is that once an appeal is filed within 21 days by the sitting governor, that will constitute a stay of action. It's automatic. In other words, he shall remain in office for the next 4 months or thereabout if he has to proceed to the Supreme Court. Because in the Court of Appeal, there is provision for 60 days. The case will be pursued within 60 days. And if there is a further appeal to the Supreme Court, another 60 days. That's 120 days, or 4 months.
All right.
So do we have a case of danger?
It isn't good, because what some of us had insisted over the years is that election petitions be concluded before the inauguration of a government,
I had asked...
Governor. Right. But, in a situation like this where the entire people of that state now, are subjected to some suspense, they don't know how the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court will eventually decide the case. It's not very good. It's not good enough.
I had asked earlier, Mr. Falana, about the case of overvoting and the fact that the tribunal has declared Oyetola by deducting votes from both candidates. And you had said something about the law. I'd like for you to clarify that. And also, why should Adeleke be the only one to pay for the sins of the overvoting? Now, will the election not have been declared inconclusive?
Well, as far as the law is concerned, wherever overvoting has taken place, the elections are usually cancelled, because the tribunal is not in a position to determine who committed the offense, who was responsible for overvoting. But usually the beneficiary is always penalized. The beneficiary is always penalized. Once you are not in a position to warn the voters and ensure that the electoral officers do not allow overvoting, you may have to pay for it, unfortunately. But in this particular instance, voters that were not captured by beavers, but whose votes were recorded manually in the form EC8A, caused the problem.
Do you see
So
it?
when you look at it, they are likely to have been the members of the PDP who voted for the governor.
Okay, do you see a case of deja vu here? If we return to 4 years ago, former Governor Yetola won the election and Adeleke challenged it, went to the tribunal. He won at the tribunal but lost at the appeal and the Supreme Court. Here we are 4 years after. Adeleke is governor. He's been challenged. Oyetola took him to the tribunal. He has won at the tribunal. What do you think may likely happen at the appeal and at the Supreme Court?
Well, looking at the judgment, I believe very strongly that it's going to be a daunting task to impeach the judgment. Inec has to be held completely responsible for what happened. And that is why it is good that this election has taken place. Inec will have to go back to the drawing table so that we do not have this experience. Inec will have to put his house in order, because if we witness this in a general election, in the presidential election, whereby you issue 2 or 3 beavers report, you could have a crisis of monumental proportion in the country.
Yeah, but what it means...
So, INEC will have to be...
Yeah. But does it not...
Not to order.
Does it not mean that the beavers alone cannot determine overvoting by what has happened in Osun? And now we will have a general election.
The beavers captures the voters. You must be accredited before you can vote. So if there is a difference between the accreditation and the voting, usually it's has always been our experience to cancel, the result emanating from such a polling unit. That's the law. But what has happened in this case, the difference now is that the beavers has become a game changer. So the question of saying, you couldn't record the exact number of accredited voters, and then we just allow everybody to vote. Such manipulation is no longer allowed. And that is why all those who are opposed to the use of beavers or technology will have to jettison their objection and allow us to move forward as a country. But this is the way to go.
Okay, Mr. Falana, where I'm trying to go is to look into how lawyers, senior lawyers like your good self, will engage what a coalition of NGOs looking into elections, the general elections, what they have called, what they have termed the possibility of having electoral manipulations in about 22 states of the Federation. One area, as you know, is what happens when Inec cancels an election at a poll where violence happens. And people are saying that there is a tendency to orchestrate violence by a particular party in a stronghold of another party just to have elections cancelled there. Can that logic not be transferred to the issue of overvoting, where you can deliberately instigate that, make it happen in the stronghold of the opposition, and have the elections cancelled. Would that not constitute a form of manipulations one way or the other?
No, you are missing 2 points. I mean, overvoting and violence. You could have a peaceful election, almost concluded, and then you may just have a gang of thugs coming to disrupt the entire election. Now, if it is beyond, if voters are helpless in the circumstance, and the violence is overwhelming, that an election cannot take place, Inec is empowered to conduct a fresh election in that place. But where you refuse to be captured by beavers, and you are allowed to vote, so you have a case of overvoting at the end of the day. And the votes that were not properly, recorded would then have to be cancelled. That's the difference.
All right. So
I do not envisage a situation where there will be violence in 22 states. Election will then be cancelled. Then you then have to conduct a fresh election in the country, because nobody can then meet the 2/3 majority of 36 states. Because if you remove 24 states, you have only 12 left. So out of 36 states, so that already means that there is no election. Because nobody will be qualified to be declared the winner under the Constitution.
in this case, I believe there were about 774 units. Now, again, I want to ask you, and I would love you to, yes, polling units. I mean, I think that, they could have just, you can do a re-election there in 700. I mean, again, if voters were not captured by beavers, that is an error of the Inec officials. Why punish a candidate for the errors of Inec? That's the question here.
No. Where Inec may be blamed is the issuance of 2 or 3 beavers report. That's where Inec can be blamed. But when it comes to overvoting, the voters that refuse to be captured, the voters that refuse to be accredited, have themselves to blame. That's the difference.
So how does this judgment...
so for me, the lesson to draw from this, the lesson from this is that if you want your vote to count, you must ensure that you are accredited. Because you cannot have an election, a valid election, without a valid accreditation. It's always been part of our law.
All right, so how does this judgment affect the upcoming elections? And what lessons can Inec learn on one hand, and the political parties?
Well, number one, the political parties will have to accept that the beavers has come to stay. Furthermore, they have to go out there and educate the voters and their supporters to ensure that before you cast your vote, ensure that you are accredited. For INEC will simply have to go back to the drawing table and ensure that its ICT department is manned by people of integrity, undoubted integrity, people of unimpeachable integrity, so that we do not have 2-3 beavers report oozing out of INEC. That can plunge the country into a serious crisis.
So how much faith do you have in general index preparedness for these elections and for the judiciary? Because it's almost apparent that many of the outcome of this election might ultimately be determined by the courts. How much of faith do you have, one, in Inec and in the judiciary who will be interpreting?
Well, I have confidence in the leadership of INEC. I know that Professor Mahmoud means well, but I cannot speak for the the officials, a lot of the officials. And you also have to recognize the majority of those who are going to conduct the election are ad hoc staff. And so once you are operating in such an atmosphere, all hands have to be on deck to have credible election. And the media must help. The media must help to educate our people, henceforth to appreciate the need to be captured by the beavers before you cast your votes. Because most Nigerians want their votes to count, but your votes can only count if you follow the procedure, outlined by the law. And for our judiciary, or for the judiciary, our courts must refrain from usurping the powers of the electorate. The people must decide who they want as their leaders. But in asking the courts to uphold the integrity of elections, the political parties, their agents, Inec officials, and the Inec leadership must ensure that proper elections are conducted. Because we must get to a stage in this country where after an election, people can say, we are not going to court. Because it will be a time-wasting exercise. We are going to waste our money if the credibility of the election cannot be doubted. And that was what happened in the United States of America. In 2020, when between November and January, before the inauguration of the president, elected president, President Biden, the cantankerous President Donald Trump filed about 62 cases. And all of them were determined by the courts and dismissed before the inauguration of the president. So we must get to that stage here where elections should be well conducted to the extent that nobody will upturn the results in any tribunal or court.
Flash Express Logistics Services has gone far, even beyond your imagination, to serve you better in Ibadan and beyond. Flash Express Logistics Services has proven integrity to make you get whatever you want, wherever you are, and whenever you wish. Our services include global and local courier services, e-commerce, express delivery, pickup and delivery, and a lot more. Your convenience and safety of your parcels and luggages are so paramount to us. For further inquiries, please call Flash Express Logistics Services on 0906-727-0530 and 0805-467-5088. Flash Express Logistics Services. Your convenience is our priority.
Ayé ló tún dá o, ẹ̀bẹ̀ mo bẹ̀ Ọlọ́run, káyé má tún mi dá. Ẹ máa subscribe sórí Bembeyeke TV. Wọ́n gan wá mọ̀ pé ìwọ̀n tó dáa ló subscribe. Orúkọ mi ni Evangelist Lékan Rẹ̀mílẹ́kùn Mọ̀mọ́ Dáfídì. Subscribe Bembeyeke TV.